This video is going to show you how to divide a polynomial by a monomial, which means that underneath your division bar is only a one-term expression. Right? So the way we do this, and you already know all the parts to it, it's just now we're putting it together in one problem. But for the first thing we need to do, we need to fill in the blanks. So we're going to divide the coefficients, which are those numbers in front of your variables. So you're going to divide those big numbers, or reduce them if they're a fraction, and then you're going to divide the variables that have the same base by using the power of a quotient property. So this is that property that we explored in the last unit. And if you remember what that property says, it says that if you have two exponents that have the same base, then when they're in a division problem, you are going to subtract those exponents. And remember, we talk about where the larger amount is and how many are left over kind of thing. Right, so the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to work out all of the odd problems in this video, and you will be responsible for doing all the even problems after watching it. Right, so with division, the main thing you want to understand is that whatever monomial is on the bottom has to apply to every term up top. So if you have an expression on top that has two terms, your final answer will have two terms, right? Because each one of those has to be divided. So for number one, when we break it down, we have 6x divided by 3 plus 9 divided by 3. And that's what you're mentally thinking. Now you won't have to write down each one of these steps for every problem unless you just feel like it helps you. But mentally, this is what you're going through. And then remember, we divide our coefficients. So 6 divided by 3 is going to give me 2. And then there's an x. There's no x's on the bottom. And then 9 divided by 3 is 3. So the answer to that division problem comes out being the binomial 2x plus 3. I had two terms on top. I have two terms in my answer. Always watch out for that. All right, so now let's go to number 3. Again, I have two terms on top, so my final answer will also have two terms in it. And again, if you want to write it out, you would write 2x to the third power divided by 3x squared minus 18x squared over 3x squared. Okay, for some of you, you literally are going to need to do this because it's what makes sense to you. Others of you are going to be savvy enough that you can go through and do this in your head. All right, so taking the first fraction, or the first division problem, 2 divided by 3 doesn't happen, so in our answer, we're still going to have 2 over 3. And then now we need to look at our exponents with our variables. They both have the same base, so now we want to subtract 3 minus 2. Since the larger number is up top, that extra x is going to stay up top. So 2x over 3 is your term for that first part. Then we go to the second piece. Negative 18 divided by 3 makes negative 6. And then if you look at your exponent, you have x squared over x squared. Anytime you have that same thing happening, those cancel each other out. So they're gone. So you just have 2x over 3 minus 6. My final answer has two terms, and my top of my division problem only had two terms. All right, now go to number 5. If you look at the top very closely, you see 3 terms up top. That means my final answer must have 3 terms, right? And some people I've seen like to draw lines right here separating those 3 terms, and then they take that monomial and they write it under each piece. That may be another approach that you like to take. But just remember, your final answer must have 3 terms in it. And if you write it like I just did, you don't need to rewrite it again because you see all the parts that you need. All right, so let's take the first term. Negative 10 divided by negative 5 is going to give me a positive 2. I have x cubed over x squared, so that means I would end up with an x with that 2. And then I have y squared over y, which means I have a y. So nothing is on the bottom, but that's my first term in my answer. Then I go to the middle and I do the same process. 25 divided by negative 5 is negative 5. X squared over x squared, remember, if it's the exact same thing, it cancels out. So there are no x's in that middle term. And then y5 over y would make y to the 4th power. Again, there's still nothing on the bottom. All right, then I go to the last term because I had 3 terms up top. My final answer has to have 3 terms in it, and this is the part students tend to forget. If I have negative 5 divided by negative 5, that makes a positive 1. And then if you look at my letters, x squared crosses off and the y's cross off. So there are no letters left over, but I need that plus 1 there because I need 3 terms in my answer. So trinomial on top means trinomial in your answer. Be careful and watch out for that one because that's usually the one I have to mark wrong the most. All right, and then if you go to number 7, Again, it's a trinomial, so if you like the whole approach of sticking those lines in there, they are nice and helpful. And then write the 6uv to the third power under all of them, and then go through your division. So 30 divided by 6 is going to be 5. Then I go to x to the fifth power. Well, there are no x's on the bottom, so that means that x to the fifth power stays on top. But if you look on the bottom, you have a u and a v still there. There was nothing to cancel it out or subtract from, so you still have u, v to the third power on the bottom. You can't clean up any of that because all the letters are different. Now go to the middle. I see negative 27 over 6. I can't divide that, but I can reduce it. Both of those numbers can be divisible by 3. So if I take 27 divided by 3, I get 9. If I take 6 divided by 3, I get 2. So there's my new coefficients. Then I see v to the fourth over v to the third, so that means I'm going to have an extra v on top. And then the u on the bottom stays on the bottom because there was nobody on top to subtract it from. Okay, so that's what the middle term looks like. And again, we have 3 terms, so we need 3 terms in our final answer. And then we get to the third part. Okay, so we're taking and doing positive 18 divided by 6, which is going to make positive 3. Okay, and then the u's are going to cancel out, and the v to the thirds are going to cancel out. So there are no more letters left. So your final answer now has 3 terms. It's a trinomial, but it had some stuff left on the top and bottom depending on what the term looked like and where the letters were. So be careful with ones like those because they're not just a top-only kind of deal. All right, so your job is to do all of the evens now that you've seen all of the odds worked out, and we will check answers and figure out if there are any issues or any questions you still have.